and this episode I'm willing to spill some secrets. Oop, there's the intro. G'day everybody and welcome back to this week's episode. For the people that are new here, welcome. We're teaching everything photography here on this channel. So if you like taking photos, or if you want to learn video, or you want to learn Photoshop or Premiere Pro or any of those sort of video or photo editors, then please do hit the subscribe button and hit the little like button while you're there. Hit the little notification bell. All those little things, they do really help the channel. It keeps me motivated to keep on making these videos or tutorials, and just it really does help to grow the channel. I'm trying to grow this channel, so it helps sort of YouTube pick up my videos and push them out to people that want to learn this sort of stuff. So any little shares or comments really does help the channel. So today we're going to be learning about how I take my landscape shots, just like that one. I'm going to just walk you through a few different things on what goes on in my brain when I'm thinking about going, even before I start going out for a photo shoot. It doesn't just happen to be that I'm just lucky enough to get a sunset like that with rain and clouds and rainbows and all sorts of stuff like that. It all goes to planning, and there is still a little bit of luck involved, but you can really start to narrow down your hit rate when you can go down to the beach or a landscape. You might know the area and you might be able to really hone down and sort of make those lucky shots, more of a not so lucky. There might be, something that you actually knew that was going to happen. Okay, so I've got my little phone here, which is also a camera. I'm going to go into that into a future episode, because I do bag on about iPhones not being as good as DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, but fact of the matter is they're actually getting pretty good, and I've bought a few things, and I've got a little vloggy setup that I've had for many years. I had this is really old, but you can get different gimbals and stuff, but that's for a later video. But there is going to be videos coming to do with vlogs, so I'm actually going to take you guys with me when I start to get a bit more gear for video. But I'm probably gonna, just for now, I'm gonna use my phone for videoing the vlogs, because that seems to be good enough. So maybe I should stop talking so much shit about iPhones. Cheers. Alright, so crapping on a bit here. I've got my list on my phone, so if I look down, just forgive me. Okay, the first thing we need to do when we're planning our photo shoots is, I normally like to look at the weather first. So there's a few apps, and I'm going to share them on the screen so you can see. Okay, so the first one I like to go into is, I like to go into the actual normal, just the, I'm an iPhone user, I just go into the general weather app, and I'm actually looking for days where there's a bit of cloud or a bit of rain, preferably rain, but obviously in Perth here we've got a really good run of weather this week, so you're not going to be able to see that. But maybe let's just go to Brisbane. Okay, so yeah, see Brisbane on a Thursday and a Friday, that little two days there where it's going from sunny to rainy, that's sort of the first indication of what kind of day I want to shoot. So I'm thinking about, you don't know if you've got a busy schedule like I do. I haven't been able to take photos for even a year and a bit now, because I've got my little daughter and she's amazing. So I'm a bit preoccupied at the moment, but I'm just trying to relearn how to be a landscape photographer with the kid. It's not as easy as it seems. But before I had my daughter, I used to be able to just choose, okay, look, Thursday, Friday looks good, so you just automatically start watching the weather on those days, sort of those days building up to those, where the weather's going to be changing. The second thing you want to do now is, when you obviously get to that day, these apps sort of only work in a 24-hour, you can only scrub through what's to come in the next 24 hours, so you kind of have to wait. If you want to shoot on Thursday afternoon or Friday afternoon, you just kind of have to be, 24 hours before that. Then you can sort of decide, okay, I'm going to go or I'm not going to go. Now we're into this app, which is called Meteor Earth. This is a really cool app. You can go to obviously whatever area you live in, And there's all these things down the bottom here, so you can click on wind, which is the first thing I like to always click on. With beach shots, I always take a lot of seascapes. I never know if it's offshore or onshore, but the wind blowing from the land towards the ocean, leave it down in the comments, is it onshore or offshore? That's the sort of wind I'm looking for. The second thing, you want to turn that off. Actually, you want to turn that on and you want to scrub through to the time where sunset will be. If you're not sure where sunset is, you can look it up in your normal general weather app. You can scrub through and see what time the sunset is. And you just sort of need to go make sure the wind is blowing in that correct direction. It doesn't have to be actually in this direction, but with a seascape, it's gonna, if the wind's blowing towards the water, it's gonna flatten everything out and you're gonna get more of a reflection shots. The water is more predictable with repetitive patterns and waves and all that sort of good stuff. So the next thing you can do here, you can turn on cloud cover. And now once you turn on cloud cover, you can just find the sunset time and you can just scrub through exactly to the sunset, and you can kind of see where the clouds are and what they're doing. But basically what you want to try and look for is, you want to look for the clouds to be over the land, and you want it to be clear over the ocean. And that might seem like there's going to be no clouds over the ocean, but if you look here, I've got a little example here of what produces the color. So if there's a gap near the horizon, the sun will peek through the gap and it will actually illuminate the underside of the cloud. So as you can see here, there's a gap, so there's no clouds here. So the sun has peeked through that gap and it's made the clouds red underneath. So because the clouds are a little bit on the horizon here, this doesn't last for very long. If you have a huge gap where the clouds are basically filling the whole sky and then they don't quite make it to the horizon, that's perfect conditions. I've got another print here which is a bit more of a, it's exactly the same as the one on the wall, but you might be able to see it a bit better here. See this one here, there's a huge gap. So the sun, as the sun's come down and it's gone below the horizon, it's pushing the light through the gap, and that's what gives you those colors. If you don't have that gap, you're not going to get any of that color. So that's the first big tip. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is what time to go and shoot. Now, this can be a bit of a hard one because people don't always have the time to make it to the best conditions, but best conditions for landscape photography is definitely golden hour and blue hour. And if you don't know what those are, basically it's just an hour of time. Golden hour is sort of, if you're talking sunset, it also happens at sunrise. So golden hour at sunset will be 1 hour before the sun goes down. So you sort of get that, maybe, I don't know, if sunset's at 6:30, golden hour will be at 5:30 to 6:30. Then when the sun goes below the horizon, you're going to get blue hour, which is 6:30 to 7:30. And they're the two sort of hours that you want to be shooting in. And it's the exact same in sunrise, it's obviously just opposite. So before the sun rises, blue hour will happen. As soon as sunrise happens, then it'll be golden hour for 1 hour. You're going to get the best results when you shoot at golden hour or blue hour because the light is a lot softer. The direction of light is coming in on an angle. Hang on. I knew this would come in handy. Okay, so golden hour, you're going to get really good conditions. You're going to get these real soft light because it's coming in on an angle. So if you look at the beer can here, you can see that there's, wherever the light's hitting, you're going to get these crazy shadows going off. If you shoot in the middle of the day, that doesn't look so flattering to the thing. But if you got, say, something like a sun going down, you're going to get these cool shadows this way or this way. And whoa, shit, that's bright. Let's put that back. Green, that'll do. Shit, let's put that back before somebody gets blind. Anyway, so what I was saying was, if you shoot in those times of day, you're going to get shadows. If the light's directly on top, it's not going to look very flattering. Everything's going to look very flat, not very contrasty, and it's just going to, yeah, just shooting golden now. That's all. Okay, so obviously what we need is a tripod and a camera. this camera does not fit on here. Demonstration purposes only. So obviously when you found what you want to take a picture of, set your camera up on your tripod, not like that. Once you've got your camera set on your tripod, we want to go into what other sort of gear we're going to be needing. So it doesn't end here with just the camera and a tripod. Normally with landscape shots, you're going to need at least a cable release or some sort of a, you can use the self timer where you press the button and it's 1, 2 and then it takes a photo. That's just going to stop your finger or your hand shaking the camera at all, because you might, even though this is locked on here solid, this is probably going to be in the sand or the dirt. So any little movement when you press that trigger, if it takes that photo at that moment, you could introduce a bit of camera shake or blur, and when it comes to landscape shots, generally don't want that. Second thing we're going to need after we have our camera and our cable release, we're going to need some ND filters. And you don't have to use ND filters. When you're first getting started with landscapes, you're not going to be able to, I'm not going to say you can't afford them, anyone can afford anything if you work hard for it, but if you're just sort of practicing, or you don't know if you're interested in landscape photography and you want to try it, you're not going to be using these. But these will make a world of difference. And ND filters, I have a whole another video on it. Please be, it's probably one of my, I think it was my first video that I did, so please be gentle in the comment section. There's some pretty bad audio and stuff in that video, and I might have to redo that one day. But I'll basically just go into what an ND filter is, but tell you guys now, it's just sunglasses for your camera. So what an ND filter is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to adjust the shutter speed. So you got to imagine that if you're facing this into the sun's extremely bright, your ISO is at 100. Now that's normally not a problem because you can normally increase your shutter speed to get a correct exposure. But when it comes to landscape photography, your shutter speed is what makes or breaks your image. So you can really, if you want to capture, I'll put a photo up on the screen for you now. If you want to capture motion in the wave, you need a slow shutter speed. You don't want to freeze the motion. So the problem with slow shutter speeds is allowing enough time for a lot of light to hit the sensor. Now if your ISO is as low as it can go, you're stuffed. You can't use a slow shutter speed to create a nice swirly wave or something. So that's where these guys come in. You just basically, this adapter ring will fit on the front of any lens that you've got, and you can just slide these guys in, and this will decrease the amount of light hitting the sensor, so you can therefore drop your shutter speed to be slower. Now we're talking about gear. This is not an ND filter tutorial, but I am going to quickly just go through with you what I think I knew when I was buying these, because these are bloody expensive. These are at least 200 bucks each. So what people normally tell you is they'll tell you to get this, which is the 10-stop filter. This is not a filter for beginners. This is for midday photography. This is really, really weird. You can get amazing results with it, but please just vary off from, just don't get these 10-stop filters. For beginners, they're an absolute put off. They're way too hard to use. What I generally use, and I don't really need the 10-stop because this thing has 3 slots, right? So you can stack these filters. So I have a 3-stop and a 6-stop. So if I ever want 10 stops, I can put these two together. That's 9 stops of light. If I want to make it 10 stops, I can easily just go from aperture from say f8 or f11, and I can go to f16, and then it'll be 10 stops. So I don't generally ever use a 10-stop filter, and you can get all these different gradient ones. Don't even worry about these for now, but it's more of a beginner's tutorial on how to take landscapes. But this will basically just darken, and you can get different strengths of these, but you don't need all the strengths of these either. Okay, enough about ND filters. Let's talk about our camera settings. Camera settings, you want to have an ISO as low as you can get it pretty much most of the time. That's going to yield the cleanest image. ISO 100, or some cameras even go down to 64, or your iPhones, if you're going to do pictures on iPhones or smartphones, don't go 100 ISO. Their ISO is way lower than that. They have like, you know, 1 and 2 ISO. Just use the lowest ISO you can get. Now with that being said, don't let the ISO affect the way your image looks with you being hung up on shooting at a low ISO. If you want to shoot a certain shutter speed and to create a certain effect and your image is coming out too dark because of you selecting that shutter speed, push your ISO up, because at the end of the day, your shutter speed is determining what kind of look you want. So if you haven't checked out, if you're a bit confused right now with shutter speeds and ISO and aperture, go and check out this video up here. It's my camera basics video. I'd go into ISO, shutter speed and aperture and what they all are, what they all do, and then you'll have a clear understanding of what's going on. For the people that know about the exposure triangle and the camera settings, what I generally like to do is sort of ISO 100, and I like to shoot around to sort of f8 to f11, somewhere in that range. That gives you sort of everything from the foreground all the way to the background, sort of always in focus. Focus on something that's sort of in the foreground. If it's a rock or something, focus on that, and then everything else should be in focus. Now when it comes to shutter speed, this is going to determine sort of probably the biggest setting in landscape photography is normally the shutter speed. That's the one you're constantly changing, especially as the sun goes down, the light's constantly changing. So you need to sort of, the shutter speed, I like to think of it as, this is just what you want your image to look like. So do you want a freeze motion or do you want to blur motion? Blur motion? That doesn't make sense. Do you want to freeze motion or do you want to make it softer? Now with the shutter speed, I like to normally shoot sort of waves that just wash in and out. Normally 1/3 of a second to half a second is normally my shutter speed that I set my camera on. You can go up to sometimes 1 second or 2 seconds. It's all dependent on the light, and it's all dependent on how quick the water's moving. So you really have to experiment as time goes on. As you take photos, you have to time the wave. That's why you would want a cable release, because if you use a 2-second timer, you can't press that button exactly. You have to press and guess that when the 2 seconds is up, it's going to start taking a photo. So you have to guess when the water's going to be near your lens. So it's always better to have the cable release. You hear so often ISO 100, ISO 100. Just play around with it. You don't have to shoot at ISO 100. I've shot plenty of landscapes, even, you know, 400, 500, 600, even 1000 ISO sometimes, just because, you know, I'm not letting the ISO dictate what shutter speed I want to use. That's the biggest point I'm trying to get across to you guys. Okay, that's it guys, I'm gonna leave it there today. I think that's enough information for you to digest. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Remember to smash the subscribe button, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. And that's where I'm gonna leave it guys. My battery is about to die. So I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.